Test, test the volume. That's how the stream begins. Begin by testing. The trial by fire. Oh my god. Whoops. Oh my god. All right, we got a few minutes until officially begin here. Just making sure everything's set up. All right, let's see. Mudlet. See if I can actually log in. Reconnect. I don't know if my game even works right now because uh-oh. I guess that kind of works. No exit to. How do you clear the screen on Mudlet? Oh. Fuck. All right. Should work. Alrighty, here we go. Good time to begin. 1 minute early, I guess. Sort of, maybe. We'll find out. All right, Jake, are you there? This is all your fault. You better be there. You guys can hear me? I need someone to acknowledge that I exist. Thanks. Users in chat. Okay. Well, we got 4 people. I don't know if Jake is here. This is all his fault. Oh, I forgot to tell Dave that I was going to start. You don't have a Twitch account. Okay, okay. I gotcha. Thanks, Jake. You could DM me as well. You don't need to spam that chat with stuff. I need to let Dave know that I'm streaming. All right, because Dave wanted to know about all this stuff as well. All righty. So let's begin with a spin. We will first. I'm gonna show you how the instancing works in action. So the first thing that I have set up is that I wanted my instancing to be available in the game through a menu. And then so we just do inst, which doesn't do anything. It's broken because that's supposed to give a summary of all the instances that are currently available that are up and running, but I never implemented that if you just put in inst by itself or instance like that. The other thing is that it accepts an argument called menu. So you just instance menu, brings up the instance menu here, and it tells you the current instance total, which is what the instance summary should pretty much be. Maybe a little bit more info in there, but I could probably just push this over to there. But I also want it to remain in the menu as well. We have 4 options. 2 of them are for creating instances. What's up, Cactus? And the other 2 are for managing the instances. These are for obviously after they're created, so you want to like remake them or you want to delete them, any other kind of management of the instances you might think of. So we're going to create a temporary instance here, and we're just going to make these temporary instances have themes. So you could just like create a forest type of instance, a sewer type of instance, cave, alley. We're just gonna pick I think an alley. Why not? Let's see if it works. So what this does is after I choose which instance I want to create, wherever the character that is using the menu is standing, that's where a portal will open up to the instance. So this A Filthy Alleyway that we see right here, this is actually a instance portal, and we go through it, we'll enter the instance. Right now I haven't fully decided on the command, the type of command I want people to put in when they're going through a portal. So right now you just kind of type portal, I think is the shortcut for it. Let's examine the object real quick. Examine number 1859. All right, we can see here coordinates. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what I did. Okay, yeah, that's wrong. The exit isn't 1859. When I set up it's showing the exit name. The exit name is usually always the name of the connected room. So instead, I just told it to basically forward the name of the connected room instead of naming the instance the same as the connected room. So 1859 is the number for the room that this exit is connected to rather than the exit itself. Otherwise, we're going to have to examine here. And we see, yeah, so we could see here that 1868 is the exit from this room, which is the portal exit. This is the portal exit. And of course, the room that it connects to is 1859. So all the exits get created after the rooms, and we'll go over that here soon once I start going through the code. So we're going to examine number 1868. I can type properly. And so this is the exit, the portal exit. The aliases is port and portal. This allows the character to travel through. This is basically the command to travel through it. I don't think that I can use just, yeah, I think exits only um, have commands based on the aliases, or commands available to filthy alleyway. Yeah, I probably have to just put in the entire thing. There we go. We go through it. So anyways, I would normally just go through it with portal, and we arrive. There is no longer an exit back to that room. Now we're inside the instance, and the instance just goes along through multiple rooms. I'm in an alleyway, and I went north. Now I'm in another alleyway. I think a lot of these are just going to be filthy alleyways. I didn't put a lot of variety in here. So we just keep moving through west and then south, southwest, north. We're just trying not to backtrack. All of this instance is just one direction. I didn't create rooms that are that you can go in multiple directions, and it kind of like has like a town square or something, you know, if you have like 4 rooms all connected to each other in a little square. But the straight shot type thing that we have going here, where you only have one direction you can go, it's pretty useful for at least testing and some basic instance stuff. If you wanted to put rooms next to each other and connect them all together, it increases the complexity a little bit. So we go northwest, northwest. Okay, now we're at the end of the instance, and the only way is to either go back or go into the main office. And this is just another portal here. We examine here. We'll see that we have an exit called main office, and it leads to the main office, which is number 7. Main office was one of the first objects created in the game. So then we just type portal again here at the end. It'll take us back to the main office. And if you see here, the mahogany door is still here that you can leave the office from, as always. And a filthy alleyway. This is also back into the instance as well. This is the portal back into the instance. But if we look, we'll see that it's no longer there. It's just the door. You can't go back into the instance because it was actually closed. And it deletes itself automatically once all occupants have left the instance. Instead of, there could be other triggers that cause an instance to be deleted. I haven't thought of any yet, and I haven't coded of any yet, but I just made sure that if all occupants have left the instance, then it will just delete itself. And this is for temporary instances. And if we saw up here in the instance menu, there's static instances. These static instances are locations in the game world that remain there all the time. They only generally have only one instance of it's created at any given time. And Hecate asked, do you have measures to avoid stalling the mud while your instances generate? No. And actually, I can comment on that a little bit further here if I go into the code itself. This might be a good time for me to transition over to the code a little bit. Let's see. Rooms, instance handler. These are helpers. Okay. So somewhere in here, I set how many rooms the instance handler should create. And I don't remember where I changed it. It might be into here. Yeah, okay. So it'll actually create a variation between anywhere from 6 to 11 rooms. Now, I probably have that math wrong because range does something where it has like no, I guess I added the +1, so it should be anywhere from 6 to 11. So this just takes a random range. Oh yeah, I might be wrong here. If I didn't add the +1, I don't know if it actually goes to 11. It might just go, this might actually be 5 to 6. I don't know. I'm always confused by the random range stuff, if you have to go down 1 or if it's +1. In any case, so I generate a random number of rooms, and what was your question? Oh yeah, if I boosted this quantity up, I had it up to like 30 or something, and when you start to get up to like 30 plus rooms that you're generating, it does take a few seconds, sometimes a little bit longer. It depends on how many you're creating, but the more rooms you create, the longer it's going to take, unfortunately. I don't know. There's probably some ways to maybe cut down on that and reduce the amount of time that it takes. But if I were to, let's just say we put this at 20 to 40, this is going to be quite a lot of rooms here. And we go back to Mudlet. Let's generate a new instance and see how long it takes to generate. Instance menu, create a temporary instance, another alley, 1 through, well, that was instant. Look at that. And now I don't really have any, I think. Okay, yeah, okay, here's a good opportunity for me to show off how you manage the instances. So, inst menu, and you can see here that temporary instances is 1. That means we have 1 in existence. So we can manage the temporary instances with number 3. And the instance management menu will show us the instance ID. And I'll go over this in more detail in the code where it creates this. But essentially what this is just the date, the time, and these are the milliseconds or whatever. So I think I just put the date and the time. 12:12. It's the 1. The 1 has to be something because I swear that I put together multiple things here. Take a look. So the instance ID, we'll find out where it's created. Oh, that's a lot of instance IDs. Okay. Okay, here's where the instance ID is created. It's the owner. It's the database ID of the owner and then the creation time tied together. So that's where the 1 comes from, because my character is the first character or the first object that was created. So if you see here, oops, moved it. This line right here is what determines the instance creation time. So back to Mudlet, we can manage this instance. We're going to choose that we're going to manage instance number, the first one here in the list. And then it tells me that which instance I'm managing, the type of instance that it is. It's a temporary instance, who created it, what time it was created, and what time it will expire. So if for some reason an instance gets created and nobody goes in it and nobody exits, eventually it will close itself, which I think the time that it takes is like 2 hours or something, maybe, is what I set it to. I don't exactly remember. It's in the code. And then it'll tell you the number of rooms and the number of exits that are actually in the instance. Which, oh, yeah, I didn't restart the server. That's why I didn't generate 30 rooms, and that's why I didn't slow down. Woohoo! I made a Twitch account just for you. I'm pretty sure the reason the number of rooms didn't get... Yeah. I just realized that. I haven't done much in-game actual testing for a while now, so I'm a little bit rusty. So we're going to delete this instance just like this, and we're now into a new menu node. This one will confirm the name or the instance ID that I want to delete. And then I put green and red here to make sure people know that this is an important decision. Yes, of course I want to delete it, and it deleted it. So we're going to exit the menu. But whatever. All right. So we're going to reload. Now we're going to try to create another one. Temporary instance, an alley, 1,000, 2,000. Yeah, that took a couple of seconds. All right. So we're going to look at the instance menu again. Manage these, manage this one. And then it has 33 rooms. So that only took like 2 seconds to make 33 rooms. That's not too bad. Really, it isn't. And I think that you're only going to start to find some massive delays when you get up into like closer to 100 or something. We're going to delete this instance. Quit out of this menu. And I'm going to go back into the code here for a second. Let's put 200 to 400 rooms. Oh, this will be fun. All right, so we'll save that. And then we're going to go back into Mudlet here. Reload. That's not bad, to be honest. If the average Deku zone is 100 rooms, it takes 5-ish seconds to generate an entire area. Dig it. My generation seems so much slower than yours. Well, I'll definitely be going over the code, but let's test this and really see how long this takes. I'm gonna start a timer on my phone. I know you guys can't see it, but I want to get like a more accurate time. I could also, I don't, there might be some kind of way for me to track the time it takes for it to finish generating the whole instance, and then let the user know how long it took for it to generate, or just put that in a log somewhere. Archimist, Zarchimist, Jake says you can click the blue I button in the bottom right to bring up timestamps. Huh? This thing? Holy shit. Wow. Okay, so let's see how long it took for that to create. Well, oh yeah, and I added "ta-ta farewell" at the end of the deletion. That right there is that's a meme reference, and I'm sure a lot of you probably know it. It's the succulent Chinese meal. And so I'm keeping that. I'm not getting rid of that. Let's see. So we created the instance here, and then it exited the thing here. So that took about what? That's almost 26 seconds. And that's more like 29. So let's just go with that, and it'll even out. And so that took about 3 seconds to make those 33 rooms. 3 seconds for 33 rooms, that's not bad. Inst menu, we're gonna create another temporary instance in alley again. Okay, let's see how long this takes. I wonder how many rooms this is gonna be. Okay. That took Let's just lob off these milliseconds here and just go with the main ones. It'd be easier. 24 would be 12 more seconds, and then 26 means that's 14 seconds. This is how bad I'm at math. Oh my god. Okay, so that took about 24 seconds. Wait, no, how did that take 24 seconds? I said 14. 14 seconds to create. Let's see how many rooms it is. Manage the temporary instances. And we'll manage this one. 220 rooms in 14 seconds. Wow. That's quite a lot. And you also got to remember it created 440 exits on top of that. So we're generating a good 660 items in 14 seconds. That's not too bad. Then we're going to delete this instance just like all the rest and see how long it takes to delete. Because it has to go through a lot more iteration to, I think, I don't know. I'll tough it, well. All right, so that was a good 15, 16 seconds. It's about the same as it took to create. This is the system that will get used to make daily dungeon types in your game, or is it more of a way to generate extra game world areas? Both. Thanks for that question, Jaegerus. That's a very good question. This instancing system is good for managing both temporary instances, as it says here, and that would be something like a solo instance or a daily type of instance. It's not restricted right now of how many people can enter, or restricted to only a group of people, meaning that a party, you have to be in an actual party mechanic to get in. But I could obviously set up those restrictions so that way only you and your party can enter it, or only you could enter it, or only so many people can enter it before the entrance, portal entrance gets deleted. But it also manages static instances, and in my game, every zone is an instance. It doesn't matter. Oh wait, I got some messages. Look at them go. You didn't reload. And okay. Anyways, so yeah, create the static instances, and I'll show you that here in a second. Now that we're going through the instance types, this does seem like the most likely place to begin, because this is the basis of what it means to have these instances. So temporary zones are set up as a dictionary inside of a module called zones. And the only purpose of this module, the zones.py, which is just a file named zones.py, and we add .py at the end to make sure that the system knows it's a Python file, and we call it a module. And inside this module, we have dictionaries, and that's all I'm going to store in this module. There's no actual code in here. This is just a storage unit for me to set up information about what I'm going to use. So in temporary zones, I can add any type of zone that I want. I've added forest, sewer, cave, alley, etc. And in here, I actually store the room keys, and these are just the names of the rooms that are going to be generating. I only have 3 different type of room names for each of these zones, for each of these instance types right now. But of course, this can easily be expanded. All it takes is just time and effort to put in new and more interesting names, or they can also be randomly generated from a pool of selections. So this is really just a kind of just like a crude setup that I threw together to get it working and going. And that's the only thing that this is used for with temporary zones. With static zones, these are actual locations in the game world that anybody can visit at any time, as long as they're able to within game restrictions, and they will always be there. So this Darkshire zone is a static zone. It's always there, but I could technically use this menu to destroy it and recreate it anytime that I want. You have mobs spawning in your zones. Yes. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, that's a little bit weird, the delay that I have. Am I even showing the right thing? Oh my god, I wasn't showing the juggling these different views on OBS is a little bit annoying. All right, let me just go back up real quick because I didn't really miss much. But the temporary zones you can see here have forest, sewer, cave, and alley. And then I just have these names. These are just the different names of the rooms, and they can all be expanded upon. Going down to the static zone, you can see that I have the Darkshire here, and it's a little bit more complex because I've got coordinates, the exit set, and the key for these are each room individually, whereas the temporary zones, they just generate random rooms. The static zones have set rooms that I predetermine. So we have another question here. Jake asks, insofar as static instances go, how do you handle live updates like editing a room description or discovering a typo in your Pi dictionary after creation? What I would do is I would come in here and I would change this to a there you go. I updated it. See? I typed in the new name for the static instance key for this room, a bustling town square. I changed it from a town square. And then I just Control S to save. And then what I would do is I would go back into the game and then I would just create the instance. But the thing is, the instance is already created, right? What you're talking about is updating the instance. And I may not have actually gotten that far yet. You can delete the instance. You can delete a static instance. As a matter of fact, I'll create a static instance. Whoops. It wasn't in the menu. All right. Let me just reconnect that real quick. Okay, so inst menu, and we'll create a static instance real quick because we don't have any created, and we'll just create Darkshire just for fun. All right. Now, there's no portal to get to Darkshire from here. Why is tester... he should have gone to none when he logged out. I'm not your bro. Let's see. Wendy, what do you have linked to me? What have you linked me? Oh, hey. Yeah. What did you do, Jake? You sent all your minions in to destroy my stream? Anyways, so we've created the instance, the static instance of Darkshire, and what I want to do is objects 100, so that way I get the most recent 100 objects that were created in the game, and I can see here that the instance was created properly. A makeshift encampment, a gate, town square, all these rooms were created. So what I want to do actually is I'm just gonna have to manually teleport to this encampment. Copy that. That worked. Make sure that I'm focused on the right thing. Okay. So we're gonna tell me to, I think that's it. Okay, so now I'm in the makeshift encampment, and this is the static instance that was generated. We go up through the main gate, we go into the town square. You can see the town square. There's like just a bunch of the same named room in this town square. Center of the town square, southwest. We go east from there, and I believe there was a road around here somewhere, but I got rid of it. Now it's just the town square, I think. And all these town squares, I need to actually change this so that way they're all put together. So you'll just see a town square to the north, south, southwest, west, and northwest, instead of seeing a town square repeated multiple times. It's hideous. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is a little bit hideous right now. Like I just said, a lot of that stuff needs to be cleaned up. So tell me to number 2 or something. No, that's not right. Whoops. What was office 7? Yeah, there we go. All right, so that instance is created. I just walked around a little bit. And I'm getting around to your question here. Manage static instances, and we can delete it just like temporary instances. It'll tell us how many rooms, how many exits, and then ask us if we really want to delete it, and then we delete it. If we wanted to update the static instances in place after they're created, it's actually something that I need to add to the instance menu. I have not done that yet, and the reason why I haven't done that is because the items that are in each of these rooms that I just deleted need to be tracked. You don't want to delete characters and items that are in a static instance room when you're refreshing the instance. So in order to do that, what I have to do is take all the contents from each of the rooms, put it into some kind of storage room, and make sure that I mark each one of them with where it came from, so that way I can return it back to the room after the new room is created. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep up on this text chat. I don't know what's going on. I got kind of bombed by you guys, and I don't know which parts I actually need to be reading and what I don't. Are the exit directions random, or can you define a topography, i.e., 3x3 square, a long hallway, a circular loop? Right now, the static zones are obviously set up in whatever configuration you want to set them up in, and that's all determined by the exits and the coordinates that you give. These static zones are actually, I set them up manually. I draw out the squares on something else, and I determine which direction what room is going to go into and the coordinates of the room all manually, which is not really a great idea. There's some, I want to create something that allows me to make this information available much easier. But as far as the temporary zones, right now they only go in one direction, and that's just they go in multiple directions, but there's only one way. You know, it's just like a hallway, basically. There are ways you could set it up so that way you can have circular areas, square areas, whatever. And that's a really good idea to have templates so you can set up. So this. All right. So yeah, if I'm going to refresh the static instance, I'll finish answering this question, is that I want to make sure that everything that's in those instances is tracked, removed from the instance is destroyed, recreated, and then all the objects are moved back in. The problem that I'm having with that theory is that right now, the rooms that are generated, they don't have any kind of unique identifier. The only thing that identifies them currently is their coordinates, or their names, or their database ID. And The problem with that is that all three of those could change. So if I put new rooms into this instance here, these coordinates may change. I may put another room in between the encampment and the town square, for example, and this will push all the coordinates and change the coordinates. Now, if I change the name of makeshift encampment and town square, that screws that over. I can't put the items back into the same room based on the name of the room, because we also have rooms that are named the same, or we may be changing the name of the room. And both of those cases, we can't use the room name to identify it. And so the only thing that I have left here is the database ID, which obviously, if we're going to be destroying all these rooms and recreating them, the database ID is going to change. So I'm thinking the only thing that I can do now is just put in a UID, a unique ID, and then I'm just going to have to manually type out something like that. I don't know. And this way I can assign it saying, okay, the items that I pulled from this instance belong to the room with the UID 32897, etc., etc., etc. This way, it'll always remain the same, and those items and objects will go back into the room after it's generated the proper room that it was supposed to go into. I hope that answers that question. I think I covered pretty well here the creation and destruction of these instances and how the zones are set up as far as these dictionaries. So what I want to move into now is the actual code section. This is going to get a little bit more complicated. So the first thing that I have is I do all of my imports, of course. And in the initialization of the instance handler is created whenever somebody calls upon the instance menu, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. Let's say instance handler is oh yeah, whenever a character uses anything that calls upon the instance handler, it's created, and the instance handler is actually assigned to the character that called upon the instance to be created, which I might not even do any of this anymore. This might not even become an instance handler because right now I'm not saving any data on it. I should be, and I'll get to that right now. The ledger that I have that I use to save all the information about what instances. You remember how earlier I was making and destroying instances, and it says there, you know, the instance ID and the epoch time and the creation and all this other stuff, all this information right here that tells me when it was created, why and how and all that. That's all determined inside the instance ledger that I'm importing. So I bring this in from a global script, and the global script always exists. It's whenever the server restarts, it's recreated, and the information that's on it is stored in the database. Let me get to this chat here. Do temporary zones send mapper information in form of vnums, GMCP, or... Okay, so yeah, I don't know anything about any of sending that mapper information. So, and no, they currently do not, but I'm sure that's something that could be implemented. What I have set up so far is pretty, it's pretty basic, and I'm guessing, who's TC Chompers? That's not Dave, is it? Dave knows about all this stuff, and that seems like a question he would ask. Anyways, now I don't have any of that set up yet because I don't even really know how any of that works, but this is pretty basic instance setup that can be expanded upon, and mostly that's why I'm going over it today. Yeah, I think, well, Evennia is the engine, and I'm pretty sure Evennia has GMCP built in, so you can use it. I don't know how it works, but you could use it. TC uses Scout, but doesn't send specific room numbers. Yeah. You're going to find that in my project, it's going to be probably too much information. I might have to start obscuring some stuff from people eventually. But so yeah, going back to this instance ledger, this is a global script. It's a type class object, which means it exists in the database. A Python object does not exist in the database. It just only exists in memory, which this instance handler is a Python object. Whereas the global scripts is a Evennia type class object, which means it's stored in the database. And the name of the global script is instance ledger, and then I assign it to this variable. And this is where I will store all the information for all the instances that are created. This is something that I should pull the information from the instance ledger and then store it on this instance handler, and then use all the information in the instance handler's RAM memory rather than pulling it from the database each and every time. So every time that I bring up my instance menu right now, it's actually pulling the information from the database again from this ledger. Another question here. Evennia docs, telnet. Okay, yeah, you're just explaining all the MUD specific extensions. Okay, cool. The next part of the initialization of this handler, and by the way, I have this handler set to create a new handler for every single character object that actually calls upon it, but that's kind of dumb. I really need to just make it a global handler where it's not tied to any type of object that's calling upon it. It's just called upon by all objects in the game as the same exact handler. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. That's how I'm able to type or able to use the shortcut of instance right here. So you can see that I set up the instance handler on the character. Very cool. I need to find me a populated Evennia codebase MUD. It's probably the only codebase I've never played. There's only one that I know of. It's called Arcs. Yeah, exactly right there. And Arcs is more of a mush type thing. Okay, yeah. Well, then good luck finding other Evennia games, because the problem with MUD development is that most people don't make it that far. Most people don't make it to production, and it takes a very long time. I've been working on this for the better part of over a year now, I'd say. Technically 2 years, but I really only spent a year working on it so far. Yeah, it takes a long time to get there. In any case, back to the code. Instance types. I set the 2 instance types here, and the reason why I do this is because instance ledger, this is the name of the attribute that's stored on the global script. And in that attribute, this instance ledger is actually a dictionary. I set this initially in, if we go down to have this server config under settings. And this is settings is where you set the global scripts for your game in Evennia. So here I have my global scripts and I have the instance ledger. You could see that here. And then I just create it as a script. Holds all record of current instances, persistent true. Huh. So it looks like, okay, yeah, the instance ledger is the global script itself. And then on it, I create attributes. These are 2 attributes that exist on it. And if the attributes don't exist, this is something that I check for because I want to make sure that they do exist. Every single time that this instance handler gets created, I want to make sure that the global script, if for some reason it doesn't have these attributes, it needs to have them before I continue. So I check here to see if it has the type, because you can see here 4 type and instance types, which is a list. And I check to see if it has each of these types, in temporary instance and static instance. If it doesn't have it, then I add it to the attributes and I set it as a dictionary to begin with. And then here I assign the ledger to the instance handler object itself, so that way I can use it to call upon later. Moving on, we're going to cover temporary static or temporary instance generation first. This is one of the first things that I wrote when creating the instance handler, and this sets up a randomly generated instance. And as you've seen earlier, there's a random number of rooms and they all go in a line. I actually want to bring up something here that'll help visualize this, because I created a let's see if I can bring up my gists. Actually, it should be in here in the code. So we're just gonna search for HTTP. There we go. Okay. Instance menu, instance handler. All right, so I'll just dump this link in chat. This one isn't about the temporary instances. This is actually the static instances, and it's just kind of like a rundown of what the static instance looks like and the results. Just as a little reminder. So we're going to go to the other URL that's here. Okay, here we go. So this next link I'm posting, this one here with the 18.2F at the end, this is for temporary instances, and this will give you a better visualization of what it looks like. We're going to bring that up here on the stream. Okay. So this is a mock-up that I did of one of the instances that I generated using the temporary instance generator. And you can see that it starts here in the middle at 0, 0, moves over to the east, down to the southeast, so on and so forth. And you can see it zigzagging, going in these different directions. The one thing that I wanted to make sure of when I was creating these temporary instances is that they don't try to circle back into the same room. I purposely told it that if this square was already taken, if the coordinate was already taken, don't send an exit in that direction. Instead, choose a different direction. Now, the one thing that I didn't yet fix up is that you can have it go in this direction, down here, up here. Well, you can like, over here and then back down. You can crisscross exits diagonally with these rooms. And I don't want that to happen, but it currently does. I'll have to fix that all up. If we move down, this is just a raw output of me walking through one of the temporary instances and examining every single room along the way to check and see if the coordinates are there and the instance ID and all this other stuff. A lot of that's not really very useful, but the map at the top kind of just gives you an idea of what it looks like when it's completely generated. All right, let's see. I gotta get back to the question than it was. All right, before I get too far off track. So basically what I do here is I just call two different methods, generate rooms and then generate exits. And once I've generated the rooms, I return a list of the rooms that I've generated, and I pass that back into generate exits, which also returns a list of exits. So now I've got here a list of rooms and exits that I've generated. And then I want to go through every single exit in the list of exits that I have and add the instance ID to it. So every room and exit in this temporary instance will have the same instance ID. So this is just me marking everything with the instance ID. Here I save the instance, which means that I actually log it and store it on the owner, which again, I think I'm going to move the instance handler away from the owner, which is the character. There's no real reason for me to be storing instance information on the character itself, or even use this instance handler on the character. But the most important thing here is that I create a log string, and this log string goes to a file. So this file will actually store this log string, and then I'll get a list of things that have been stored on here. Let me see if I can bring up a example. So that'll store it in the Hecate, and then it'll be under server logs. And then I have, let's see. What do you mean Notepad? I've always used Notepad++. Why did all this stuff reset? Whatever. All right, so I'm gonna copy all this real quick. I'm just gonna put all this in here. Let's see. All right. Might have to zoom in a little bit here, make it bigger. I don't know if this is showing up properly. Could be. Okay. So this is what the log looks like. It'll have the date and the time. It'll tell me the instance ID that I created, the creation time, the zone type, etc., and who created it, and how many rooms it has, when it expires, etc. So this is the type of log string that goes into the file. We move back here. So this is just saving the dictionary or the, okay, let's see. Saving it to the ledger. This is the global script ledger that I was talking about that I use to store all my information about instances. And it, what happens is that underneath the instance type, so we'll get the dictionary off the ledger of the static instances or the temporary instances. And I'll use this instance type to store a new key in it, because the instance type, whether static or temporary, is a dictionary. And I'll generate a new dictionary key based on the instance ID. And then from there, I'll add another dictionary in there, and the instance ID will hold all this information: creator, log string, sentience, etc. And then after that, if the instance type is temporary, then it will save different types of information, I think, is how I set it up. Save to object that generated. Oh yeah, this is for saving it to the owner. And something that I need to get rid of. Of course, that's where I destroy instances, but we want to jump back up here because I'm going all over the place. The point is that the first thing I do is set up the time of when everything's being created, and I create the instance ID, then I generate the rooms, I generate the exits, and then I save the instance by logging it and saving it to the ledger itself. Check chat because I haven't checked for a bit. All right. So the first method we're going to go through in the temporary instance here is generate rooms. And this is actually pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's not really much complexity as far as figuring out what things are going on. And this, you just decide how many rooms you want to generate, and then you take that range of how many rooms you have, and you just create an object for each one of the iterations. And then on the room object itself, I just add a bunch of tags, including the instance ID, the zone type, instance spawn testing. What? I don't know what that is. It might have been something that I was doing for testing. That might have to be removed. And then has spawn. Oh yeah, that was something that I wanted to show, was that it does have spawn, but it's a little bit slow and clunky right now. And then it returns the room list after it's generated the room. So that just goes right back up there. Easy peasy. The next part is that it takes the generate exits. And for generate exits, it needs the room list. So we're going to enumerate over the room list. We're going to start at 1. And what enumerate does is it basically counts for you which iteration you're on. It could start at 0, which I think maybe by default it starts at 0, or maybe by default it starts at 1. A lot of other stuff in Python starts at 0, but in any case, you could specify what number you want it to start on. And so I know that the first iteration of this loop is going to be number 1. And if the first iteration is happening, this is the first one right here. If number equals 1, this means that we need to generate a portal in the origin room that leads to the first room of the instance. So I create an exit object. I assign it to this variable portal to instance, so that way I know what it is, and then I append it to the list. Now this portal to instance, what this is I'm really just appending a reference to the object itself. So that way it can always get back to this exit object that I've created. Then room 1 coordinates are always going to be 0, 0. So I set that up manually. And I add those coordinates to the room's attributes. And then I also add those coordinates to a list called use coordinates. And that's for me to make sure that I don't accidentally create a exit that goes back into the same room or back into another room that I don't want it to. This, well, also I think that, yeah, I think that's what it's for. So in any case, the thing that really gets tricky is determining which direction to go next. In the temporary instances, it decides a randomized direction, and it has to first check whether or not there's already a room there. And if so, then it's going to pick a different direction to go instead. So that's where the use coordinates come into play. The current room coordinates is what I need. So I need the current room's coordinates and all the coordinates that I've already created. And I use that in the generate new room coordinates method. So we're going to jump down there real quick. And I'll just read this out loud. It picks a random cardinal direction and uses it to generate a new set of random XY coordinates. Test the coordinates to ensure that they aren't already in use, and when the results aren't already in the use coordinates list, they are sent to the handler. Or set to the handler, whichever. So here what I do is I just take free space equals false. So that way I know that I haven't found an open spot on the map yet. And I have all the different cardinal directions that's possible for this exit to go. And while free space equals false, which it currently does when I first start out, it's going to choose a random direction from random choice that cardinal directions, these here. So it's just going to randomly pick south or northeast or something like that. And it's going to try to see if there's already a room in that direction. How it does that is it takes the current room coordinates and the direction choice and tries to determine if there's already a room in that direction. Let's find out how that's done. going to, where is it? Oh, it's above. It probably should be below. So you can see here the little cheat sheet that I have. This is to determine what the coordinates will be for the direction that I chose. So let's say that I'm currently in 0, 0. If I move to the east, that means that X is going to stay the same, or is going to be +1, but Y is going to stay the same. So I'm staying the same on the Y, but I'm moving 1 to the east. So I'm actually going +1. Now in video games, this might throw some people if they're not familiar, but with video games, X is plus as you go down on the chart. It always starts at 0, 0 in the top left corner. And then as you go to the right, you increase the Y. I'm sorry, X. I was mixed up. You increase X as you go to the right, and you increase Y as you go down. So that's why these are set up as they are. And we're only going one room over, so we only need to change the coordinate by one number. So if we're going north, we want to take the current coordinates and we want to subtract 1 from Y to show that we're going north, and that'll be the new coordinates. And these new coordinates of X and Y, we then test. We'll return this from here, and we will get the test coordinates, and the test coordinates will be checked against the used coordinates. If it's in that list, then we remove the direction from the card directions choice. So that way it can no longer be checked for. We already know that it's occupied. We don't need to try again. But if the next room coordinates is not in the currently used coordinates, then we know that it's a free space, and that's true. And then we can return the direction choice that we chose and the next room coordinates. So this is how we determine which direction we're going and the coordinates of the next room. I hope that wasn't confusing. Anybody confused? Just making sure. Seems pretty straightforward. All right. So that's for room number 1. We now have we now know what the next room number 2. We already know what the coordinates will be and the direction that it'll be from this room. So the exit to next room, we're going to create that because the first exit that we created was just from the origin room to the instance itself. Now we need to determine, once you're in the instance, we need to exit to go to the next room. So this is the exit to go to the next room. And you could see that we, I don't think we actually set, okay. The location is the room. Okay, yeah, the destination. The destination room, when is that set? Okay, yeah. So what happens here is that I have not generated, or, well, I might have done this differently before. Like I said, this is some of the code that I first wrote when I created this instance handler. But what I was trying to do was I was trying to hold off on setting the destination of the exit to the next room, which is something that this object needs to have. An exit needs to have a destination. Well, if it doesn't, then it's not really much of an exit. And so I add the tags, exit to next room. I add the tags of the cardinal direction. This is important for making sure that the person can type north to go north. And then for the exits list, I just append this new exit. And then I store these objects, the exit to the next room and the room itself, for the next room. So that way I know what room that I came from previously. So these are the previous room and the previous room's exit to go to the next room. This is the next room. These are all the rooms between the first and the last. And the exit to the previous room is generated here. And this will go back to the first room. And I will use the, let's see. Oh yeah, the location is the current room that it's in, and the destination is the previous room. So now we've tied it so that way it goes back to the previous room. And the previous room's exit dot destination is also set here, because when we're in this iteration, we know that we're the next iteration from the previous room, and that means we're in the next room. And we could set the destination of the previous room. Again, hopefully this is not confusing, but basically what I'm doing is I'm creating as I'm going along, and then I look back one step and I make sure that I fill in any missing information that I didn't have. So a lot of this is just a lot of the same code that's up in here, except for it's all specifically for rooms that are between the first and the last, which means that I don't have to worry about getting the character back out of the instance. And then the last part of the iteration, when the number of the iterations reaches the same number of the rooms list, which means we're at the last room, it knows that. Then we'll create an exit back into the origin room, and that's the end of it. We return the exit list after we've generated all these instances. Am I missing anything here? Because it seems like a lot of this is pretty straightforward, and I don't know if it's confusing. I want to move on to static instances if anybody's got any other questions that I may be missing. Is this more confusing than just reading it yourself? That's the question. All right, let's see. So the static instance generation is quite a bit different. This is my second take on coding something that handles instances. What this does is it takes all the information in the zones right here, and I've already written out a lot of the information that the game needs to create these rooms and the exits. I've already determined the coordinates for them, and I've already determined what exits each of these rooms will have. So since I know the encampment is 0, 0, and I know that it only has one exit, which is to the north, but if you look at this, it's like, okay, well then how does encampment know that the exit to the north goes to the main gate? Well, it's pretty simple, because north is -1 on the y-axis, and these coordinates here, x and y, are -1 on the y difference from these. So that's how it knows that this is the next room. By taking these coordinates and the direction, adding or subtracting the proper x or y, and then using that coordinate to determine what room is next. All right. So for the dictionary and the instructions, if you look here, static zones is a dictionary, and it holds each of the zones, Darkshire, testing zone. But you can see that Darkshire and testing zone are both lists. So I've got a dictionary and then a list. And then inside the list, I have lists. I have a list of dictionaries. Each room itself is a dictionary, and that allows me to hold the information for the room itself. So I just need this list, the Darkshire list, and I say that the Darkshire list is the instructions. Right here, you can see that I got from static zones, the zone type, which would be Darkshire, and that's the instructions. So this is the list of Darkshire rooms. So for each dictionary inside the list of Darkshire rooms, we're going to execute all of this code here. We're going to take the key from the zone right here and make shift encampment. And we're going to set it as the room key. And that's just the variable right now. We haven't created the room. And then we get the description as well. We set that. We get the tags that I might need. Get the tags. And if there are no tags, it actually defaults as a list, just in case I didn't add any tags. I think somewhere in here I might have put some tags, probably in testing zone. Yeah, okay. Darkshire was a little bit earlier. Testing zone is a little bit more filled in. So we'll just go ahead with the tags. As you can see here, I set the tags inside the zone module. And these are just any of the tags that I want to create. Each of the tags is in a tuple. Rooms is the category name for the tag, and Hecate's Haven is actually just the name of the tag itself. So that's where we get the tags, and we append okay, so yeah, we get a list of tags. And then here I actually want to add another tag manually, and this is the zone type and the zone ID. Something that maybe I could set in here, I'm not sure, but we already know what the zone type is for this. Just copy and oops. Zone type, type of zone. Okay, so that sewer, forest, whatever. The hell happened? What's that? I don't know what button that is. So here, the name of the zone requested. So zone type would actually just be Darkshire. So I'm just adding that as the zone ID. So that way I can always find Darkshire, any of the rooms that have the tag Darkshire or starting zone, whatever. And here's where I actually generate the room for each dictionary in the instructions list. I create the room, I set the room key, the tags, the attributes, I add coordinates, which is already set in the zone ledger here. And then, of course, the room description. Here, I check to see if the room has any static sentience, and if so, it calls the spawner. Okay, so I think what I was doing was that I wanted to set up a thing where I can create static sentience, and it'll spawn them. So Hoff here is a static sentient, which is just an NPC. His name is Hoff, and we will find him over here in the sentience list. We're gonna take a look at sentient classes. And here's the list or a dictionary of static sentience, and we're going to create Hoff. Hoff has a key of Hoff, and he's a character type. He has these tags that he's a merchant, and he has attributes of stock. And so the good thing is that I can set up my sentience or NPCs in a whole different module. Once I've set that up, I can easily just set the name of the static sentient that I want to generate, and it'll generate it here. If there are any static sentients for it to set up, it'll go through the list of the static sentients that I need, and for each one, it will spawn the sentient into the room. And I add it to a list of sentients, so that way I know what sentients exist in the zone overall. And then I just append this room to the list of rooms. So now that I've gone through all of the dictionary instructions and I've generated Hecate's Haven, Shopper's Paradise, Back Alley, Training Yard, Apothecary's Shop, etc. Once I've generated all of those, I'm now done with this for loop and it's time to generate the exits. Originally, I think my temporary instance generation was set up to create a room and then create the exits and then create the next room and then create the exits, create the next room and then the exits. And that might be where I was setting it up to retroactively fill in information for the previous room because I didn't have the next room generated, but I've since switched it over. I've restructured my logic so that way I could just batch generate all the rooms that I need and then batch generate all the exits and still not lose information on where the exits should go and where they're placed. It makes it a lot easier to actually be able to put the exit directly in the room as well. So for the exits, we're going to enumerate over them. We're going to enumerate over instructions, which is just each of these rooms here. Each dictionary here, this is an instruction. So we're iterating over the list of instructions, and we're going to take each dictionary and we're going to say that there exists, since each of these instructions are a dictionary in itself, which determines the room. That means that the current room is actually the number that I'm on and the iteration through the instructions. So we can match this up. It matches up perfectly. The number of instructions are the same number of rooms that exist. So we just set the current room from the room list as the number of the instruction that we're on. So if we're in instruction 0, I guess I start at 0. I start at 0 because lists start at 0. So it makes it so much easier. So I'm at the 0 number room in the list. And then this is where I determine what coordinates I'm going to use for the exit, or hard direction room coordinates. So what I do is I take the cardinal direction that I know this exit needs to go, like if it needs to go north, and I take the if I take the coordinates for it, and I can determine the coordinates for the room that the exit needs to connect to. So for the room and the rooms list, I ask it, does this room have the same coordinates as the room that I want to connect to? And if it's true, then the destination has been found. And I set the exit destination as the room that I found that is the proper room to go to. I successfully found the exit destination, so then I create the exit, and then I can set the current room as where the exit exists, and the exit destination is set as the room that I found that matches the coordinates that it should go to. And then we could just add the tags and then add the list to the list of exits. Pretty straightforward. And just like in temporary instance generation, I actually set up a save instance here. Initially I had it just really messed up. But I've since streamlined it quite a bit, where now generating static instances and temporary instances both use a lot of the same helpers and a lot of the same methods. So I was able to cut down quite a bit on how I do all this. So that's pretty much it. Those instances are created. That's all the information I need to create these exits. The thing is, I hope the coordinate thing, figuring out which direction I'm going and which direction I'm coming from, as far as the cardinal direction and the coordinates of the room, I hope that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it. Like I said, it's just a plus or minus 1 on the X or the Y, and then you just check those coordinates to make sure that that's what you want. So the helpers that I have here is set time. This is just for the logging of the instance generation. And this just sets up a timestamp to allow me to know when the instance was created and how long it should stay alive for. And it looks like I actually set it for 1 hour before it automatically gets deleted. The second thing here is to generate the room key. This is used for temporary instances only, and it just takes the variable for module out of the rooms.zones, which is this module up here, and it takes from the temporary, it grabs, this is the variable that it grabs is temporary zones. So this is going to be a dictionary, and I'm just going to go into the dictionary and I'm going to get the room keys that are possible. So I scroll back up here to the temporary zones. You can see the room keys. There's 3 of them. So this will end up with 3 keys. And then I could just choose a random key from the list and return that room key, which this is probably yelling at me that I could just do that all in the same line. That's pretty straightforward. And the generate room key is only used for temporary instances, obviously, because the static ones have their room key set manually. And then this here is kind of useful. This determines the cardinal direction of the exit of the connected room that would lead back to the cardinal direction passed to this method. So for example, if I am in a room and I have an exit that goes east, well, if we go east into the next room, what is the exit that should lead back to the room I just came from? Well, that exit should be west, because we know that the opposite of east is west. So this is just for me to have a little helper here, so that way I know if I create an exit going east, that the other exit that connects back to this room should be the opposite of whatever direction I'm going. So if I go south into a room, then obviously going north should take me back into the room I just came from. And then I already went over these a little bit earlier. Okay. Here we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes. This is what determines how many people are currently in the instance and whether it becomes empty. So entering the instance and exiting the instance will execute these 2 blocks of code. Whenever a character enters the instance, let's see here. Determine the currently occupied room's instance ID. So this is just to tell the character, hey, tell me what room you just entered. Give me the instance ID of it. Okay, here's the instance ID. We're going to get it from the location, and it's a tag. And now we have the instance ID of the room we just entered. Now that we've entered this instance and we have the instance ID, we need to add the character to the instance occupant list. So that way we know that there's another occupant in the instance. And we need to take the temporary instance. Right now, it's not set up for static instances. The reason why I have this specifically as temporary instances is because I don't plan on deleting static instances based on whether people are coming or going. The temporary instance definitely needs that. And so I need to get the key occupants from my ledger. My ledger is set up under temporary instance, which is a dictionary attribute on the ledger. And in that dictionary, I have a key called instance ID, and that itself is a dictionary. And from that, I need to get a key called occupants. And if it is none, then we want to create it. We want to create the list of occupants. So this is be the first character that entered this instance if this line of code gets executed. So we're creating a list of occupants, and then once we have the list of occupants, we know that it's created, we know that it exists on the instance ID here, and we can just add it. Add the owner. We don't need to worry about if the occupants list exists. Or else, if it doesn't, then I just created an error message that will get logged into the temporary instance errors.log, and it'll also message the owner saying that the enter instance method could not find the instance ID, which is something went critically wrong, and that's not good. All right, so then we return from that, and the exit instance basically does the opposite. It takes the source location, which is the location that the last room. This source location is the last room in the temporary instance. It's the room that holds the portal that goes back to wherever the character started from. So this source location will have the instance ID of the instance that the character is leaving. And then I go and I check for that instance, and I make sure to remove the character from the occupants list. Once I've removed the character from the occupants list, I need to check now to see if it's empty. Because if it's the last character to leave the instance, that means that I need to destroy the instance. And so if it is the last character, we'll call destroy instance, and we will tell it what instance type to destroy and the instance ID that it is. The reason why I have this is because even though static instances are not automatically destroyed based on triggers like this, it is destroyed through the instance menu. All right, so we're going to call the destroy instance, and that's all the way up here. That's something I haven't covered yet. Is anybody still watching? Is anybody falling asleep yet? This is incredibly boring. You know, I don't mind doing this, but like, I'm not entirely sure how this benefits anybody using this code. Because I don't know if this is this helpful at all. Like, I just feel like I'm just reading out loud what I'm seeing here, and I don't know if I'm even explaining it well. Even I feel confused a little bit. I'm lost. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to explain things as basic as I can, you know? It's just like, it's pretty straightforward. I just generate some rooms, people come, people go. If there's nobody left, I delete it and I clean up. That's really the gist of it if you don't know anything about code. Yeah, it's just how it runs in the background. You just see how I store the information that I've generated, how I use that to destroy the instance, and how I use it to determine what to create next, mostly. So in destroy instance, the gist of this here is that I need to go through and check to see if there's any sentience in it. Like if there's if I create an instance in the sewers, for example, and there's a rat mob in there, and it's left over when I leave, well, I want to make sure that that rat does not get moved to some other location. Because if you delete a room with a character in it, it'll move that character out of the room. I think it'll move any object out of the room. It'll only automatically delete exits that are in the room, but all the other objects will be sent back to their default home. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want the rats and the spiders and the wasps and all that other stuff to get sent back to some random room. I want them to be deleted. So when I go through the deletion process, I make sure to check if there's anything left in the sentience list, and I delete all that. And this includes static instances as well. So that Hoff guy and over in the static instances, I'll be deleting him too. Whenever I go through the deletion process, this that might not be such a good idea for static instances in the long run, because characters like Hoff might have attributes that changed or that are persistent that I want to keep, like his stock, right? For example, right? His stock. If I need to refresh the instance of wherever Hoff is living, I don't want his stock to reset to nothing. That would suck. Um, I want him to remain. So I'm probably going to have to change this so that way I am determining which things I want to delete as I'm going through. Yeah, cool. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it so far. And obviously, I don't have to delete all the exits. I do so manually because I like knowing that I made sure that I deleted all of the exits that are in the room. And of course, I don't have to worry about what is an exit because I stored that on my instance ledger here underneath the exits name. So I already have a list of all the exits that exist within this instance, and I could just go through and delete them all. Once the list is empty, then I make sure that I remove the exits list from the attribute itself, from the ledger. Then I go through and I delete all the rooms. The last thing I do is I clean up the instance stuff that was stored on the character that created the instance. So like my Kviticus character, for example, would have this instance dictionary stored on it, and I cleaned that up as well. Which, like I said earlier, I'm probably going to move away from storing any instance information on characters like that. And so this is probably going to just become useless once I do that. So that's pretty straightforward as far as how I destroy the instance and make sure that it all gets properly cleaned up. And I did not cover how the objects themselves get cleaned up. I only covered exits, rooms, and the sentients, which is NPCs or mobs. How the objects in the room get cleaned up is that they actually do not. They go to their default home. And the reason why I do this is, which again, I might have to determine there's some objects that always need to remain in the room and exempt them. But when the room gets deleted, all the objects that were in it get sent to their default home. And this is just some property that's set on the object itself that tells me what room they belong to if they have no other room. So if they're standing inside of a room and it gets deleted, then this is the room that they will be sent to instead in case that gets deleted and they have nowhere else to exist. Right now, any object that's created in these rooms, I believe, are set to a default home of the black hole. The black hole room will automatically delete anything that enters it. So, all the objects currently in a temporary instance do get destroyed, but they get destroyed in I'd say a more graceful way, I guess, because globally anything that that is just a leftover object that's sitting around will get destroyed by entering the black hole room. And so I don't really have to worry about cleaning up the objects. As long as I set their default home to black hole, I know that whenever they lose their room that they're in, if they don't have a home anymore, then they won't just get deleted. And there's some other types of rooms, special rooms that I have, such as like a storage room for special stuff that I don't want to get deleted. Like a really important piece of armor or weapon or something that I don't want to be deleted from the game. Even if somebody discards it, it'd be good to be able to retrieve it later. So I actually think that's it as far as the instance handler. I covered all of this. A lot of it's pretty straightforward. The directions that you're creating as far as exits and all of that, the way that the temporary instance is generated in a long hallway that just goes in random directions, that can all be tweaked and modified and changed. Some of that could probably be rewritten. Like I said, the temporary instance generation, this I did refactor it quite a bit recently when I started implementing static instances, so that way they can all be tied into the same systems. But it could probably still use another another go over, including, just additional functionality, maybe some templates, like a square instance, circle instance, whatever you want to do. And I think that would actually be the way to go. The way that I have it set up now, and I'll pull up the image again here. Leave page, I don't need that. This thing, yeah, this is shit. I mean, who wants to really walk through this? It's kind of confusing. You go east, southeast, southwest, south, like there's just no logic to this really. And if you're walking through it, you're just lost, pretty lost. So it'd be nice to set up just templates of things that you might want to create instead. I think that would be the better way to go if I were to change this. Okay. So we've covered the instance handler and we're an hour and 40 minutes. What the fuck? Oh my God. That took 2 hours? Really? Kidding. I did start like 10 minutes early, right? Yeah, so it's more like an hour and a half. Yeah, but geez, I was expecting to have a lot more progress than that by that time. But I mean, I did cover static sentience of how I determine those. I did cover how I write out the zones and the static zones and all the instance handler. There's something else here that we have not tackled yet that I think some folk will really find helpful, which is the instance menu. And the instance menu is something that I spent quite a bit of time on more recently, with Griotch helping me out quite a bit. Because Eve menu can get really confusing, especially if you want to make it efficient and logical as far as how you call nodes, how you pass information between nodes, etc. So one of the first things that I want to point out here is that, well, this is just the exit node. It doesn't really need to have anything written on it, but anything that's an Eve menu node, I made sure to put the word node in front of it. So that way I know that this is specifically to deal with the Evennia menu system itself that's built in. These other methods down here that have the underscore in front of it, that's to tell me that this is a method that is only used here within, it's like a helper. And I have some code in there that helps me when I need to do something that's not specifically part of the menu. Menu stuff is very cool. Using Baroque command line syntax for complex tasks and MUDs is very frustrating. There's some people that really despise menus. I don't know. I don't get it, man. I think menus are great. They're not for everything. I totally agree that some things are much quicker when you can just dump a command into the command line and push enter instead of going through multiple menus. But there's some other stuff, like you say, that you could just end up with this crazy complex syntax command line thing that you need to enter, and it just gets really wacky. And it'd be quicker just to bring up a freaking menu and push 11212. Like how difficult is that? 11212. You go through the menu, you memorize like what menus are what, and you just push the numbers as you go along instead of putting in this weird syntax command. So I agree with you on that. So the main menu, this is where you land when you come in for the first time in the menu. And I need to, or I want to also to open, close all this. Don't save. Don't save anything. Don't save any of the changes I made. What the hell? Oh, I did save that. Revert changes, discard changes. Or what did I change here? Oh yeah, that. Discard those changes too, sure. Okie dokie. Close off that. Okay. It gets mostly frustrating when you're trying to pass very long strings. Yeah. And also, I would agree that the command line stuff can get slower and more frustrating when you also are dealing with things like database IDs or instance IDs or anything that's like arbitrary or specific to a certain thing, whereas in the menu it tells you all that information immediately. As you probably saw earlier when I was going through the instance menu, it gives you all that information and allows you to choose very simply just by looking at the display that you're at. But I could also see that if it gets to the point where you have like 500 instances and you're trying to go through the menu, it might get a little bit clunky, but that's also something you can change in the instance menu itself to try to improve that behavior. So these are just the options that you could see in the instance menu itself when I'm in game. I'll bring that up here. Instance menu, so you'll see main menu, I have current instance total, how many instances I have, and then the options for creating instances. Also, the help files for commands that have tons of fields you can enter become difficult to read. Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you though, I've seen some people in the Evennia Discord are just like, menus, I'm like, what? I get that they're not always the solution, but they can be a much cleaner solution than just entering some long, obscure command. All right, I'm going to switch back over to here. And of course, you could see here, this is where I get the information about how many temporary instances I have and how many static instances I have. So essentially what I do is I grab from the ledger, the instance ledger, and I get the attributes static instance and temporary instance, which both of them are dictionaries, I believe. Are they lists? Whatever. Yeah, they're dictionaries. So I just count how many keys are on the dictionary. Is essentially, I just get the length of the dictionary, which will tell me how many keys are in the dictionary. And then that tells me how many instances I have. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. That's how the main menu is set up. Whenever you choose temporary instance or static instance, it actually, okay, here. So creating a temporary or static instance is actually two different menu nodes that it goes to. Whereas if you manage the instances, it's the same manage instance node that it goes to, which is right here. And the reason for this is that managing instances is pretty much the same as you saw earlier when I was deleting temporary instances or static instances. It was essentially the same process of managing them. It gets the same information here. It gives me the instance ID, the creator, the instance type, the instance ID, and then it asks me, how I want to manage the instance. I can return to main menu. And the reason why you don't see options here that say what number to choose. So, okay. Here's the thing. The options are generated as you open up this menu node. So every time you open up this menu node, it'll go through every instance in the dictionary of the ledger. And the way that we know which ledger to use or which dictionary to use from the ledger is we tell it what instance type. How do we know what instance type? It's because we pass the instance type through the keyword arguments. So what we do here is in Eve menu, you can not only tell it what node to go to next, but you can also pass a dictionary along with it that anytime you pass a dictionary, this dictionary is technically a keyword argument. And so this dictionary here, we have a key of instance type. Both of these keys are the same, but the values are different. One is temporary and one is static. And so that's how when we get down to the manage instance node, we know that we are what type of dictionary to get from the ledger. So if this is a static instance, that if we're managing the static instances, then we'll get that from the ledger and then we'll have that dictionary. Now we can pull from that dictionary every item that's in there. And this is just pulling the key value pair. This means the key is the instance ID and the value is another dictionary. The value is the dictionary which holds these pieces of information. So you can see here I have value creator. Creator is the key of the value that I want to get. And I probably should name this different. It probably shouldn't be key value. That's bad. I should not be doing that. I should be naming it proper. It should be instance ID. And it should be instance dictionary. Whatever, you know. I'll probably put instant ID. And then we can just change this to inst ID. And you put inst ID. So we're just I'm just changing the variables here. So that way they're a little bit more descriptive than just value. That doesn't make any sense, right? So from the instance dictionary, we want to get the creator and we want to find out what the value of the creator is, and we're just going to put it in here. So the thing with Eve menu is that you can create options is a list in Eve menu. So all of these options that you see here, I'm going to bring it back up on Mudlet. You got Mudlet. Each one of these options, 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of these is a element in a list. So this entire thing, all 4 of these are all inside one list called options. And then we'll go back. Visual Studio. So I just iterate over the dictionary that I'm pulling from, and I check to see, you know, for every instance in the dictionary, I want to create a new option. And for that option, I want all of this information generated on there. And this is what will be displayed whenever you go into the Manage Instance menu section. Options.append. At the very end, I want to add one more option, and that is to go back to the main menu to allow and this is a static option, so this will always remain. So even if this is empty and there are no other options to populate, it will at least give you the option to return to the main menu. And I can test that real quick here. So we have no static instances, no temporary instances, and we want to manage static instances. Let's save that. Okay, well, we only have one option, return to main menu. Okay, good. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Easy to use. So that's managing the instances. Manage a single instance. This is the menu right after when you choose what instance you want to manage. So this is where you get into managing a very specific one type of instance. And of course, it will populate all the same information again, the number of rooms, the number of exits, etc. And the text here is just like a little title for the menu that tells you the information about what this menu is. And if I want to delete the instance, it gives that option. Ask me to go to info, and then I'll jump over to instance confirmation just to make sure. This is where I'd ask you yes or no. Are you sure? And here this allows you to return back to the instance management menu, which goes back to manage instances, which may not be a good thing because when you go to manage instances up here, you have to tell it what instance type you want to manage. And I don't think, did I forward that information? No, I don't think so. It's still in there. It's still in the keyword arguments, and the keyword arguments automatically get passed through, I believe. So I think if you return back to the management menu, it'll still tell you, it'll still know whether you're managing static or temporary instances. It won't change until you go back to the main menu itself and choose a different option. Okay, yeah, that should work. So here's the deletion confirmation. This is the yes, of course, or no. Either way, even if you choose yes or no, here's the interesting thing. You still go to the same method of delete instance. Now, this is not a node within the menu itself. This is just a little snippet of code that's only used in the background for the menus. Once you get in here, I set a keyword here, a false or true, about whether or not you actually want to delete it. So this is just like, this section is just kind of like a temporary little side venue. It's like, hey, are you sure? Yes or no? And then whatever you choose here will get passed on to delete instance. And if delete here, if it is true, then it will go ahead and destroy the instance. It'll call destroy instance from the instance handler that we were looking at earlier. And if not, then it would just say that the instance deletion was aborted, the instance remains, and then it will just return to the main menu. Okay. Call instance. Okay, what this does, this is the end after, this is from creating instances. So up here, once you've decided whether you want to create a temporary or static instance, which I haven't covered any of this information really just yet, but what it does is it just asks you which type of instance you want to create, and then it takes that information, the zone, and whether or not the zone actually already exists, by the way. It will take that information and what was I saying? Whatever. If you If you do end up creating one of these instances, what it'll do is it'll call instance, which I don't know why I named it call instance. What the hell does that mean? Whatever. So it's going to attempt to create these instances, whether it's a static instance that it needs to generate or a temporary instance. And that's determined by the instance type up here. But we want to make sure that we don't have two of the same static instances. So we don't want two Darkshires. We don't want two whatever zone you've already created. If it's a static instance, you don't want to create two of them. So it'll check here to see if one of those zones already exists, one of the static zones. And if it does, it'll tell you that it already exists. It cannot be created, and it will abort you back to the main menu. So let's get aborted. Let's try it out. I want to see what happens when I get aborted. All right, so we're gonna create a static instance, Darkshire, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now we're out of the instance menu. We go to instance menu again. And also, I'm probably going to change it so that way when you create an instance, it doesn't just kick you out of the menu, because maybe you don't want to get kicked out of the menu. Maybe you just want to continue managing instances instead. It is kind of stupid. Just keep going back into the menu again. And I'll probably just, once I create the instance down here, instead of return end menu, I'll probably just return node main menu. So that way it goes back to the main menu instead. So, yeah, this is Mudlet yelling at me that the mapper is out of date. I don't give a shit. Okay, so we're going to create the static instance, which we already did, and Darkshire, and we can just manage it just to see. Oh, well, there's no temporary instances. So we're going to return. I should probably, if there are no instances, maybe there's a way that I could set it up so that way if there's nothing there and it only has a main menu, instead it'll just tell me that there's nothing to manage, and then it'll return the main menu automatically. That might be kind of helpful. I'm not, this is probably going to take some finagling, because the weird thing with menus and the reason why they get so complex is because you can't execute code on a decision that hasn't been entered yet. So by the time the player enters their choice in the menu, that means they're leaving the node. So you have to take that information and react to it on the next node, or you have to send the program over to one of the little helper functions that you create in the kind of intermediate area, and then determine what to do next. So you can't just determine what to do on the menu node itself until something has been chosen by the player. That's why a lot of things get passed around from node to node. So we'll just choose static. We're going to manage those. We see that it's created. Hit 1 to go in there. I want to see going back to the instance management menu. It should return me to the static. Ooh. Menu node manage instances is either not implemented, cause an error, make another choice. Yeah, it's freaking broken. Huh. That, I don't think it's a typo. Manage instances with an S at the end. That should be correct. Yeah, it is broken. I probably need to set the keyword or something, but okay, so that's real broken. 3, go back to the main menu. We know that one of the static instances is already created, Darkshire. We're going to attempt to create it again. And here I set it up so that way it grays out and it says already exists in the menu. Now, like I said earlier, I can't, I guess if I've graded out and it already exists, I could probably just exclude it from, well, I don't want to, I don't know if I want to exclude it from the list of instances to generate, because I want them to know that this is still available to generate as an option, but just not at the moment. So if I tried to generate Darkshire again, even though it already exists, if I press 1, then it will yell at me and say, Darkshire already exists, it cannot be created, and then it'll kick me back to the main menu. There you go. GG. All done. That largely covers the management and deletion of instances in the menu. Why is Visual Studio Code? Okay, there, it's showing up. Okay. Ending the menu, etc. Management of instances, single instances. Okay, so the only thing I didn't cover was the 2 menu nodes called create temporary instance and create static instance. And essentially what this does is, just like in the other nodes, it goes and gets the dictionary and it goes through every single key and it takes each of those keys and it appends it as an option in the menu. So that way all the things that are there are available there dynamically. So let's take, for example, let's see. If I go to create temporary instance, you see how it says forest, sewer, cave, and alley. If I were to actually go into the zones here, and I'm up here in the temporary zones, thing is that I can just go ahead and just add another one below alley. I could just add like cathedral or graveyard or something like that, right? And then I just save this. And then the next time that, I mean, I'll just show you actually. Why not? You need a comma there. We're going to just call this graveyard. And just we'll just leave the room keys. It's the same. It doesn't matter. So we just added graveyard to our zones very simply like that. We just added it. We just saved the file. And then whenever I go back into the game, I'm gonna first thing I'm gonna do is, well, I don't have a abort and return to main menu when you're in this generate instance thing. I need to add that. That's something, but whatever. I'll just quit out of the menu under instance menu. I just want to delete that that static instance real quick while I'm here. Delete this. Yes. Matter of fact, with this, you just need to press 111. That's pretty cool. All right, so that reload. Now you saw that there was only forest, sewer, cave, and alley in there. There was only 4 options. So now we reloaded and we go to inst menu and we want to generate a temporary instance. And there we go. We have graveyard. Bam. To see how easy that is to just go ahead and add another temporary instance type into there. And we don't have to go back and mess with any of the instance handler or even the instance menu itself. The only thing that I need to edit in order to add more content is this simple little file. And I just add my information in here. Like I added graveyard, and now I could just create a graveyard instance. Of course, the rooms are gonna show up as these things. The only other problem that I see with this here is that there's some other areas where I do need to set up whether graveyard even has mobs. So like, let's take the sewer, for example. The sewer has mobs set up to actually spawn in it right now. And I'm going to show that to you, which is something that I haven't done. And I should have done earlier, but I didn't pick sewage tunnel. And I think I still have it set to generate 200 rooms. Fuck. I'm not going in there. I'm just gonna I'm gonna delete this and I know it's only 20 rooms or 10 rooms. Did I change it back? Oh yeah, I reverted everything. That's right. I reverted the changes. All right, see you later, man. I'm wrapping up anyways. I'm almost done. If anybody's even still left here at all, I'm almost done. So all right. So I generated a sewer instance. Put out of there. And then I just go into the sewer portal. And then as soon as I enter, a timer starts and then mobs will begin to spawn. The timer is a little bit wonked out. I have it set so that way it's supposed to, my spawner is supposed to spawn a mob immediately. But it doesn't do that for some reason. The timer in between spawning each mob is set to 30 seconds, so that way it start the explanation again. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back and reiterate 2 hours. Thanks, Absolver. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back and just reiterate 2 hours worth of content. No, you'll have to watch the VOD. Although I personally, I'm not sure how useful this whole thing has been, honestly. Some people said that it's been interesting or that's been useful to them, but sounds like the courteous thing to do. Well, then I guess I'm just an asshole. These mobs should start spawning. I'm just going to move to the next room, and maybe that's what triggers it. I forget. My mob spawning is just all screwed up. It's unnecessarily delayed, and it might be entirely broken at the moment. I don't know. If I change too much about how the instances are set up, or if I change the spawner or something else, I might have changed some kind of element that it's relying on, and it's not able to spawn anything. But spawning takes place whenever a character enters a room. Like anytime a character moves from room to room, there's different triggers that go off. And it's supposed to be set to that. Oh, I know why it's not spawning, because this character is an admin. So I'm gonna quell real quick. So I don't know if it's gonna, I might have to move again before it starts spawning. So yeah, I don't like quell though. I really don't like it. And many other people don't like it either. There's a lot of people that complain about it. And I tell people all the time, just make a second account, just make a tester account, because quelling and unquelling is too much of a hassle. It just run a second account, and that way you can have your admin account and your tester account, and you can do everything you need to do. Yeah, exactly. See, you use 2 characters as well. This might not work at all. I think it's just going to keep checking to see whether or not I'm an admin, and just, I think I might even just, whatever check that I set up might actually bypass the quell thing. I don't think I'm checking for account permissions. I'm checking for something else probably. I haven't really used Evennia's permissions or its locks yet. So this is probably a complete failure. I don't think I'm going to get them to spawn from this account. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter because it's not spawning anyways. um, I'm going to also switch the scene over so that way I can bring up the second character, and let's see if this works. Let's see. Window capture. That should be working, right? Okay. All right. So I've already got an instance created and my admin is in there. You know what? I think I'm just gonna clean that up real quick before I start creating new stuff. Oh my god, I broke it. Ugh. Damn it. Looks like the other mudlet that I have with my admin on has crashed or something. So whatever. We're just gonna do this real quick. I'm just gonna create a temporary instance and we'll do the sewers and then we'll portal in there. Now, see, I'm in a sewers instance, but the admin account, which probably isn't still logged in right now, should be in a completely other instance. So we're both in some kind of sewer instances, but we're in totally different ones. So I've arrived in the sewers. Like I said, my spawner is a little bit whacked right now, so it looks like it's gonna take a second for something to spawn. Yeah. Hit the screen. There we go. Fix that up a little bit. So granted, I've not seen the beginning of this, but I'm assuming that by instancing you mean each character gets a dedicated set of rooms. That is correct, but it's not, it doesn't have to be per character. Currently, any number of characters can enter the instance, but once the first character enters, it starts tracking the occupancy. And if it tracks whether or not there's anybody left in the instance. So anytime somebody leaves the instance, it goes through the motions of removing the character from the instance that it's tracking. And then if the length of the list of characters remaining in the instance is 0, then it will delete the instance. As I was saying earlier, there's different ways that it could be set up. So that way you could have only your party could enter the instance. Only a single person can enter an instance. Like if it belongs to a certain person, only they're allowed in. You could set up all kinds of restrictions about who can enter, when they can enter, how they can enter, etc. But yeah, these are all rooms that are generated into the game world, loading out there in the nothing, and you'll just go through the instance and it'll be deleted whenever you're done. I also have it set up so that way I can create static instances, which are part of the game world and should always remain. Good timing on that question. Yeah, you're going to have to watch the VOD, man. There's no way I'm going through all that again. But to give you the too long didn't watch, there is static instance generation, and actually all the rest of my game world is broken down into zones. And each of these zones is basically a static instance. So everything in the game will be technically an instance. Any room in the game is an instance. So even the static ones, public static ones, like if you're in a town square or if you're at the bank or something, the bank is an instance of a room and it can be managed through the instance menu and destroyed and recreated. But only one of those banks can be existing at any one time. So the instance management of static instances makes it so that way you can only have one of any type of static instance generated at any given time. And yeah, as far as even if it is a temporary instance, but you don't want it to be destroyed when everybody leaves, instead you want it to be destroyed on a timer, there is already still a timer set in for an hour. And if an instance doesn't get deleted by having everybody leave within an hour, like if I just created an instance and I just walk away and I don't ever go into it, an hour later, the game should go through the process of destroying the instance itself. And I could set that, of course, to any time that I want or some other condition, you know? It doesn't look like anything spawning. Maybe I got to go one more room. I don't know. This might not work at all. My spawner might just be completely borked. It's been a while since I've actually messed around with actual in-game stuff. And there's currently some parts of my code that is like half finished. And I don't think any of it has to do with spawners or mobs. But I could have changed something. I've made a lot of changes since the last time I tested the spawner. So something might be affecting it. I don't know. Well, in any case, it doesn't look like anything's going to spawn. But it should spawn rats that start attacking me. Or spiders. Or snakes. That's a good question. Is the script running? Scripts. Oh, he's not. This account is not in a min. Yeah, I don't know. That should all be generated automatically whenever somebody enters or exits any kind of zone that has spawning set up. So let me just bring up Visual Studio Code here real quick, and I'm just gonna show you the spawn handler. Start spawning. This happens. Spawn handler is created at object receive, at object leave. So this is just my general occupancy tracking. This is just how I set a room, just the room itself. I tell it whether or not the room is occupied, or I set it vacant. Whenever people come and go inside of a room. Well, I know in the instance handler it does set a tag right here, has spawn. And the thing is, whenever a character where do I do it? It's probably in set room occupied. So it's probably in the room handler. Set room occupied. And if it has a unique ID, which normally would be the instance ID or just the zone ID, which I do have a zone ID that I assign on the instance handler. You could see right here the zone ID right here. Instance spawn testing. That might have something to do with it. Instance spawn testing. So we'll go back here to room handler. That's the ID. And if the UID is not in zones, then I add it to the zone ledger. Okay. And then if the owner has tags as spawn, then it should start the spawner. So the room that I'm in definitely has the tag has spawn, as far as I'm aware, according to the way that I generate these rooms. And it should go to the start spawner and the spawn handler. Start spawning equals true. And if the number of sentients in the room is less than 2 per occupant count, or the zone, or if it's more than start spawning equals false. So yeah, here it should find what target it wants to attack. It gets the target's reputation, which is important for determining what it spawns. Should pick the spawn room and the sentient key, etc. Whatever. I'm going off on tangents now. I've lost track what I was doing. Southwest, west, north, southeast, northwest, northeast. And then portal back to the common room. Should delete all those. All right. This does remind me to introduce an in-game debugging channel. So basically what you're saying is that whenever the game performs actions, that it should all be logged to a channel, and then you could just tune into the channel to see what it's doing. It's not a bad idea. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've completely lost track of what I was trying to cover at the end of the instance menu, and I don't even think it freaking matters anymore because I covered most of it. I think the only thing left that I didn't cover was just these 2 nodes here about creating a static instance and creating a temporary instance. I covered most of it. I explained how you can add another zone to it by adding the graveyard. And then the static instance, it only just goes through the list of static instances that exist, and it tells you if it already exists, etc. So that's it. That is how I handle save. No. And I want to revert those. Don't need the graveyard. And close out Mudlet. That's the end of the stream. 2.5 hours is long enough for me. I don't know if this was even helpful or whatever. Some people thought that it was useful to some degree, which is good. And I'm down to nobody viewing anymore anyways, so it's time to end. Basically add a debug function that checks a tag on the character room whatever, and if it is true, echo messages to some form of in-game message. You're viewing. Jake, you stayed here. Yay! That's awesome. Well, you were the one that requested this, so I hope you got what you wanted from it. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, Absolver. I think that you could send it to one of the channels. Evennia does have channels. It's a lot to take in, but yes, it helped. I don't really get the point of the ledger. Ah, okay. This is why you need to ask questions. A ledger is a global script. It is a singular object that exists within the database that can hold information about all the instances in the game. So it's a central point for me to store all the information about all the instances in the game in the database. So that's what global scripts are good for. Of course, they're good for a lot of things, but they're also good for a database object that exists within the game. There's only one instance of it, one location for it, and it handles information that exists across the game. So similar to the instance ledger, I also have a zone ledger, which I will bring up here. Zone ledger. In the room handler, I use the zone ledger to track occupancy across the entire zone. So instead of just tracking, is this room occupied? Yes or no? I can save that on the room itself. But if I want to know, if I have a collection of 10 rooms that exist in a zone, and I want to know how many occupants are in those 10 rooms altogether, say there's 3 people within that zone. Well, instead of iterating through all the rooms of the zone and checking if there's somebody already in there, I just set the number of occupants in the zone ledger itself. So now, well, I can just look at the zone ledger and say, oh, there's 4 occupants in this zone. And this zone consists of these 10 rooms. So that way I know all this information immediately. And it can all be stored in the database on the global scripts attributes. So the zone ledger is the name of the global script, and it has an attribute called zones, which is the dictionary. And this is where I store all the information about the different zones. So I'll add a zone in there based on the zone ID. So the zone ID for Darkshire would be Darkshire. So in here in the zone ledger, I would have a dictionary entry called Darkshire. That would be the key. And then Darkshire would be a dictionary itself that holds all the values that are pertinent to Darkshire, including how many people are currently in Darkshire, how many mobs are in Darkshire, etc. That makes sense. I haven't played with any scripts yet, so I'll have to learn all about that. It's pretty straightforward. The global scripts are easy to use because you could just, from Evennia, import global scripts, as you can see at the top here. And then you just do global scripts dot the name of your global script, and then you just access attributes as if you would any other Evennia object. Pretty straightforward as far as where you set the global scripts. I'm going to close all these out real quick. I don't get too much clutter. Just want to cover that real quick. Config, settings, and this is where you set your global scripts in the server config settings.py. So you can see here that I set the zone ledger and it's persistent. It holds record of game-wide zone data, including occupancy. And I just created it as a type of script. You can see I also have time cycle set up here as well, which you probably may or may not have noticed. Sometimes it pops up and tells me, it's afternoon, it's midnight, whatever. So that's what that does. But yeah, this is where you set the global scripts, and then you could just use them as kind of like a blank object to just store crap on it. You could just throw anything on there you want. It's pretty useful. And then this way you only have one entity in the entire game world that holds that information instead of having to deal with a bunch of objects that you got to manipulate. You could just go to this one object and find that information instead. All right, let's see here. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to cover. Are there any more last minute questions before I wrap up by ending the stream? You are welcome, sir. And I probably pissed a lot of people off that thought they were going to watch an interesting mud development video. And then they show up, and then I just start reading out loud what's in front of me and trying to explain all this confusing stuff about jumping around my instance handler, and they're like, what the hell is this? I just wonder how many, because I had like maybe like 10 or so people show up at first. And I just wonder how many of them are like, what the fuck? This is not at all entertaining. I was pushing it around to different discords as if it was going to be some great epic stream or something, but this is really just for you, Jake. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and good luck on your finals tonight. I hope you get some rest. I'm gonna let you prepare your mind and body. All right, I'm gonna let the video run just a little bit here because Twitch likes to cut off the stream earlier, so there'll just be some silence here at the end. Yeah, no problem. I'll talk to you later.